what can we do to avoid the insanity and division of the previous election, whether you win or lose?
Well, I hope it's not a close one. I mean, I don't know how people can vote for somebody that has destroyed our country, the inflation, the bad economy. But to me, in a way, the worst is what they've allowed to happen at our border, where they've allowed millions of people to come in here from places that you don't want to know about. And I can't believe that that's going to be a close election. We're leading in the polls, and it looks close, but I think in the end, it's not going to be a close election.
What do you think is the right way to solve the immigration crisis? Is mass deportation one of the solutions you would think about?
Well, you've got to get the criminals out of here fast, right? The people from mental institutions, you got to get them back into their mental institution. No country can afford this. It's just too much money. You look at what's happening in New York and Chicago and LA and lots of places, and you take a look at what's happening. There's no country can afford this. We can't afford it. And we've got to get the bad ones out immediately, and the rest have to be worked on. It's happened before. Dwight Eisenhower was sort of a moderate president, moderate type person, but he hated when he saw people pouring into the country, and they were nothing like now. I probably got elected in 2016 because of the border. And I told people what was happening, and they understood it. And I won the election, I think, because of the border. Our border is 25 times worse right now than it was in 2016. I had it fixed too. I had it the last week of the famous chart that I put up was exactly that. The chart. When I looked to the right, I said, there's the chart. Bing. That was not a pleasant experience. But the chart that I put up said, and that was done by Border Patrol, that was the lowest number that we've ever had come into our country in recorded history. And we have to get it back to that again. We will.
Let me ask you about Project 2025. So you've publicly said that you don't have any direct connection to Project
nothing. I know nothing about it. And they know that too. Democrats know that. And I purposely haven't read it because I want to say to you, I have no idea what it's all about. It's easier than saying I read it and, all of the things. No, I purposely haven't read it. And I've heard about it. I've heard about things that are in there that I don't like. And there's some things in there that everybody would like. But there are things that I don't like at all. And I think it's unfortunate that they put it out, but it doesn't mean anything because it has nothing to do with me. Project 25 has absolutely nothing to do with me.
You posted recently about marijuana and that you're okay with it being legalized, but it has to be done safely. Can you explain your policy there?
Well, I just put out a paper. And first of all, medical marijuana has been amazing. It's been, I've had friends and I've had others and doctors telling me that it's been absolutely amazing, the medical marijuana. And we put out a statement that we can live with the marijuana. It's got to be a certain age, to buy it. It's got to be done in a very concerted, lawful way. And the way they're doing it in Florida, I think, is going to be actually good. It's going to be very good. But it's got to be done in a good way. It's got to be done in a clean way. You go into some of these places, like in New York, it smells all marijuana. You've got to have a system where there's control. And I think the way they've done it in Florida is very good.
Do you know anything about psychedelics? So I'm not a drug guy, but I recently did ayahuasca.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that speak to sort of the health benefits and the spiritual benefits of these different psychedelics.
Right.
I think we would probably have a better world if everybody in Congress took some mushrooms, perhaps. Now I know you stay away from all of that stuff. I know also veterans use it for dealing with PTSD and all that kind of stuff. So it's great. And it's interesting that you're thinking about being more accepting of some of these drugs, which don't just have a recreational purpose, but a medical purpose, a treatment purpose.
So we put out a statement today. We're going to put out another one probably next week, be more specific, although I think it's pretty specific. And we'll see how that all goes. That's a referendum coming up in some states, but it's coming up, and we'll see how it does. I will say it's been very hard to beat it. You take a look at the numbers, it's been very hard to beat it. So I think it'll generally pass, but you want to do it in a safe way.
Speaking of marijuana, let me ask you about my good friend Joe Rogan. So you had a bit of tension with him. So when he said nice things about RFK Jr., I think you've said some not so nice things about Joe, and I think that was a bit unfair. And as a fan of Joe, I would love to see you do his podcast, because he is legit the greatest conversationalist in the world. So what's the story behind the tension?
I don't think there was any tension. And I've always liked him, but I don't know him. I mean, I only see him when I walk into the arena with Dana and I shake his hand. I see him there, and I think he's good at what he does, but I don't know about doing his podcast. I mean, I guess I'd do it, but I haven't been asked, and I'm not asking them, I'm not asking anybody.
It sounds like a challenging negotiation situation.
No, it's not. It's not really a negotiation. And he's sort of a liberal guy, I guess, from what I understand. But he likes Kennedy. This was before I found this out, before Kennedy came in with us. He's going to be great. Bobby's going to be great. But I like that he likes Kennedy. I do too. He's a different kind of a guy, but he's got some great things going. And I think he's going to be beyond politics. I think he could be quite influential in taking care of some situations that you probably would agree should be taken care of.
The Joe Rogan post is an example. I would love to get your psychology about behind the tweets and the posts on truth. Are you sometimes being intentionally provocative, or are you just speaking your mind? And are there times where you regret some of the truths you've posted?
Yeah, I do. I mean, but not that often, honestly. I do a lot of reposting. The ones you get in trouble with are the reposts, because you find down deep they're into some group that you're not supposed to be reposting. You don't even know if those groups are good, bad, or indifferent. But the reposts are the ones that really get you in trouble. When you do your own words, it's sort of easier. But the reposts go very quickly. And if you're going to check every single little symbol, and I don't know, it's worked out pretty well for me. I tell you, truth is very powerful, truth. And it's my platform, and it's been very powerful, very, very powerful. Goes everywhere. I call it my typewriter, that's actually my typewriter.
What are you doing usually when you're composing a truth? Like, are you chilling back on a couch?
Couches, beds.
Okay.
A lot of different things. I mean,
like late at night and just
I'd like to do some late at night. I'm not a huge sleeper, but whenever I do them, past like 3 o'clock, they criticize you the next day. Trump was up truthing. Okay. Trump was truthing at 3 o'clock in the morning. And there should be no problem with that. And then when you think about time zones, how do they know that you're like, in a time zone, like an Eastern zone? So, but every time I do it after like 2 or 3 o'clock, it's like, why is he doing that? But it's gotten, the truth has become a very successful platform. And I like doing it. And it goes everywhere. As soon as I do it, it goes everywhere.
The country seems more divided than ever.
Yeah.
What can you do to help alleviate some of that division?
Well, you can get rid of these two people. They're terrible. They're terrible. You don't want to have them running this country. They're not equipped to run it. Joe, it's a disaster. Okay. And Kamala, I think she'll end up being worse than him. We'll see. I think a lot's now, the convention's over with, and I see them leading in just about all the polls now. They had their little honeymoon period, as they call it. And we'll see how that all goes. Who knows?
From my personal opinion, I think you are at your best when you're talking about a positive vision of the future versus criticizing the other side.
Yeah, I think you have to criticize, though. I think they're nasty. They came up with a story that I looked down and I called soldiers that died in World War I suckers and losers. Okay. Now, number one, who would say that? Number two, who would say it to military people? Nobody. It was a made-up story. It was just a made-up story. And they like to repeat it over again. They know it was made up. I have 26 witnesses that nothing was said. They don't want to hear about that. Like she lied on McDonald's. She said that she worked at McDonald's. It's not a big lie, but it's a big lie. It's so, they just went and they checked. And unless she can show something, they don't talk about, the press isn't going to follow up with it, but I'll keep hammering it. But she never worked at McDonald's. It was just sort of a cool thing to say, hey, I worked at McDonald's, But one of the worst was 2 days ago, I went to Arlington at the request of people that lost their children. There'll always be children to those people. You understand that. That's not politically incorrect thing to say. The mother comes up, I lost my child. But, the child is a soldier. And lost the child because of Biden and because of Kamala, just as though they had the gun in their hand, because it was so badly handled. It should have been done at Bagram, which is the big air base. It shouldn't have been done at a small little airport right in the middle of town where people stormed it. It was a true disaster. And they asked me if I'd come and celebrate with them 3 years. 3 years. They died 3 years ago. And I said, I'm going to try. I got to know them because I brought them here, actually. One night, they almost all came here. And they said, I wonder if Trump will actually come and see us. I heard they were here. I came, so we stayed for like 4 hours listening to music up on a deck right upstairs. Beautiful. And they were great people. So they called me over the last couple of weeks and they said, we're going to have a reunion, our 3-year reunion. Would you be able to come? And it was very hard for me to do it logistically, but I said, I'll get it done. And I got there and we had a beautiful time. I didn't run away. I didn't just walk in, shake hands and walk out like people do. And I wasn't looking at my watch like Joe Biden does. And it was amazing. So I did it for them. I didn't do it for me. I don't need the publicity. I mean, I get more publicity probably than anybody. You would know that better than me, but I think maybe more than anybody that's ever lived. I don't know, but I don't think anyone could have any more. Every time you turn on television, there's like 9 different stories, all on different topics, and they're all about Trump. As an example, you interview a lot of people, good people, successful people. Let's see how you do with this interview versus them, okay? I mean, I can tell you right now, you're going to get the highest numbers you've ever had by sometimes a factor of 10. But when a Gold Star family asks me to come in and spend time with them, and then they said, sir, we did a ceremony, and then we went down to the graves, which was quite a distance away. They said, sir, would you come to the grave? And then they said when we were there, it's very sad, actually, because these people shouldn't have died. They shouldn't have died. They died because of Biden and because of Kamala. They died because, just like if they pulled the trigger, okay? Now, I don't know if that's controversial to say, but I don't think it is. Afghanistan was the most incompetently run operation I think I've ever seen, military or otherwise. They're incompetent. But the families asked me if I'd go. I did go. Then the family said, could we have a picture at the tombstone of my son? And we did. son or daughter. There was a daughter too. And I took numerous pictures with the families. I don't know if anybody else that was in the pictures, but they were mostly families, I guess. That was it. And then I left. I spent a lot of time with them. Then I left, and I get home that night, and I get a call that the Biden administration with Kamala is accusing me of using Arlington for publicity. I was in just the opposite. Just the opposite. And actually, did you see, it just came out, the families actually put out a very strong statement defending me. They said, we asked him to be there.
Well, politicians and the media can play those games. And you're right. Your name gets a lot of views. You're probably legit the most famous person in the world. But on the previous thing, in the spirit of unity, you used to be a Democrat.
Yeah.
Setting the politicians aside, what do you respect most about people who lean left, who are Democrats themselves or of that persuasion, progressives, liberals, and so on?
Well, look, I respect the fact that everybody's in there. And, you know, to a certain extent, life is what you do while you're waiting to die. So you might as well do a good job. I think in terms of what's happening now, I think, you know, we have a chance to save the country. This country's going down. And I called it with Venezuela. I called it with a lot of different countries. And this country's going down. If we don't win this election, the election coming up on November 5th is the most important election this country's ever had. Because if we don't win it, I don't know that there'll be another election. And it's going to be a communist country or close.
And there's a lot of people listening to this, myself included, that doesn't think that Kamala is a communist.
Well, she's a Marxist.
Her father's a Marxist.
That's right.
And she's advocating.
It's a little unusual, you know.
She's advocating for some policies that are towards the direction of democratic socialism, let's say. But there's a lot of people that kind of know the way government works, and they say, well, none of those policies are going to actually come to reality. It's just being used during the campaign to, you know, groceries are too expensive. We need them cheaper. So let's talk about price controls. And that's never going to come to reality.
It could come to reality. Look, I mean, she came out with price control. It's been tried like 121 different times at different places over the years, and it's never worked once. It leads to communism. It leads to socialism. It leads to having no food on the shelves, and it leads to tremendous inflation.
It's just
a bad idea.
Whenever we use terms like communism for her, and I don't know if you know this, but some people call you a fascist.
Yeah, they do. So I figure it's all right to call them a communist. Yeah, they call me a lot worse than I call them.
They do indeed. It's just sometimes...
It's interesting, though. They'll call me something that's terrible, and then I'll hit them back. And they'll say, isn't it terrible what Trump said? I said, well, wait a minute. They just called me. So I believe you have to fight fire with fire. I believe they're very evil people. These are evil people. You know, we have an enemy from the outside, and we have an enemy from within. And in my opinion, the enemy from within are radical left lunatics. And I think you have to fight back.
Whenever there's a lot of fighting fire with fire, it's too easy to forget that there's a middle of America that is that's moderate and kind of sees the good in both sides and just likes one side more than the other in terms of policies. Like I said, there's a lot of people that like your policies, that like your skill in being able to negotiate and end wars, and they don't see the impending destruction of America.
You know, we had no wars when I was president. That's a big thing. Not since 78 years has that happened. But we had no wars when I was president. We defeated ISIS, but that was a war that was started that we weren't anywhere near defeating. But think of it, I had no wars. And Viktor Orban, the prime minister of Hungary, said the world has to have Trump back because everybody was afraid of Trump. Now, that's what he said. So I'm not using that term, but I think they respected me. But he said China was afraid, Russia was afraid, everybody was afraid. And I don't care what word they use. Probably that's even a better word if you want to know the truth. But let's use the word respect. They had respect for me. They had respect for the country. I mean, I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, the Russian pipeline. Nobody else could have done that. I ended it. It was done. Then Biden comes in and he approved it. So we're defending Germany and these other countries for peanuts compared to what it's worth. And they're paying the person we're defending them against billions and billions of dollars for energy. I said, how does that work? And we had it out with them, and it worked out good. And they paid hundreds of billions of dollars. Or you wouldn't even have a NATO right now. You wouldn't have NATO if it wasn't for me.
As the leader of the United States, you were the most powerful man in the world. As you mentioned, not only the most famous, but the most powerful. And if you become leader again, you will have unprecedented power. Just on your own personal psychology, what does that power do to you? Is there any threat of it corrupting how you see the world?
No, I don't think so. Look, I've been there for 4 years. I could have done a big number on Hillary Clinton. I thought it looked terrible to take the president's wife and put her in prison. She's so lucky. I didn't do anything. She's so lucky. Hillary is a lucky woman because I had a lot of people pushing me too. They wanted to see something, but I could have done something very bad. I thought it looked so bad. Think of it. You have the president of the United States, and you also had Secretary of State, right? She was. But you're going to put the president's wife in prison? And yet when I got out there, they have all these hoaxes. They're all hoaxes. But they have all these dishonest hoaxes, just like they did in the past with Russia. That was a hoax. The 51 different, agencies or agents, that was a hoax. The whole thing was a hoax. There was so many hoaxes and scams. But I didn't want to put her in jail. And I didn't. And I explained it to people. They say, lock her up. It doesn't. We won. I said, we don't want to put her in jail. We want to bring the country together. I want to bring the country together. You don't bring the country together by putting her in jail. But then when I got out, they went to work on me. It's amazing. And they suffer from massive Trump derangement syndrome, TDS. And I don't know if it's curable from their standpoint.
A lot of people are very interested in footage of UFOs. The Pentagon has released a few videos, and there's been anecdotal reports from fighter pilots. So a lot of people want to know, will you help push the Pentagon to release more footage, which a lot of people claim is available?
Oh, yeah, sure, I'll do that. I would do that. I'd love to do that. I have to do that. But they also are pushing me on Kennedy. Mm-hmm. And I did release a lot, but I had people come to me and beg me not to do it. But I'll be doing that very early on. But I would do that.
There's a moment where you had some hesitation about Epstein, releasing some of the documents on Epstein. Why the hesitation?
I don't think I'm not involved. I never went to his island, fortunately. But a lot of people did.
Why do you think so many smart, powerful people allowed him to get so close?
He was a good salesman. He was, was a hale and hearty type of guy. He had some nice assets that he'd throw around, like islands. But a lot of big people went to that island. But fortunately, I was not one of them.
It's just very strange for a lot of people that the list of clients that went to the island has not been made public.
Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? Probably will be, by the way. Probably.
So if you're able to, you'll be...
Yeah, I'd certainly take a look at it. Now, Kennedy's interesting because it's so many years ago. They do that for danger, too, because, endangers certain people, et cetera, et cetera. So Kennedy is very different from the Epstein thing. But yeah, I'd be inclined to do the Epstein. I'd have no problem with it.
That's great to hear. What gives you strength when you're getting attacked? You're one of the most attacked people in the world.
I think you can't care that much. I know people that care so much about everything, like what people are saying. You can't care too much because you end up choking.
One of the tragic things about life is that it ends. How often do you think about your death? Are you afraid of it?
I have a friend who's very, very successful, and he's in his 80s, mid 80s, and he asked me that exact same question. I turned it around. I said, well, what about you? He said, I think about it every minute of every day. And then a week later, he called me to tell me something. And he starts off the conversation by going, tick, tock, tick, tock.
Yeah.
This is a dark person, in a sense, but it is what it is. I mean, if you're religious, you have, I think, a better feeling toward it. You're supposed to go to heaven, ideally not hell, but you're supposed to go to heaven if you're good. I think our country's missing a lot of religion. I think it really was a much better place with religion. It was almost a guide, to a certain extent it was a guide. You want to be good to people. Without religion, there are no guardrails. I'd love to see us get back to religion, more religion in this country.
Well, Mr. President, thank you for putting yourself out there, and thank you for talking today.
Look, I love the country. I want to see the country be great. And we have a real chance of doing it, but it's our last chance. And I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.